I know a few DSOs that from the very beginning, they went out and recruited top level talent from other medical or top level groups where they put them in, and it completely changes their organization from day one in efficiencies.
Yeah.
But nobody really can see that and understand that until you've done it.
Welcome to another episode of Dental Riffs. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National, where we provide predictable new patient flow for offices just like yours.
My name is Tanner Applegate. I am the CEO and founder of Unified Dental. We are the only single sign-on password manager for your dental practice. It makes your lives and your team's lives so much easier.
Okay, so we got a really interesting topic I think that you're going to be really interested in working in the dental industry. And it's around, we're still kind of playing with the wording of it, but it's around the dental industry, not the dentist and not the professionals in the industry, but the supporting people around the dental industry is filled with a lot of C players, meaning not B players, not A players. So we're going to talk about that, and especially around passion. But before we jump into that, I know, Tanner, you had a topic that we actually didn't get to cover last week around private equity. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that and kind of pick your brain.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common understanding, right? That private equity has had its, I wouldn't even say foot dipped in the water anymore. It's almost kind of like they're fully submerged now up to their neck. But they've been pretty involved in the dental space, buying up DSOs, being heavily involved in all of that. And that's what's driven the multiples to increase and essentially kind of drives consolidation in the space. One of the things, though, that has been so interesting to me, and this is an indicator of the consolidation, is that private equity has now not only become kind of a regular part of the DSO consolidation, but they're actually starting to shift and invest heavily in these ancillary or side companies in the DSO space, right? So what that means, I've actually had a handful of kind of private equity people reach out to me that say, hey, I'd love any introductions if you know any of these service-based companies that are willing to sell. Right. So what that looks like.
What kind of services? So break that down for us.
Exactly right. So for example, a DSO, I mean, Gary, your company is a great example, right? You're a DSO, most DSOs don't have a fully built internal marketing team. And so companies like SMC National pop up to be able to support DSOs in their marketing. And so all of a sudden they provide a service, they outsource it to you, and you do it for them, right? Other things that exist in the DSO space will be like IT companies, RCM companies, right? Accounting companies, et cetera. And so any of these companies that ultimately are supporting these DSOs in services that the DSO would not do for themselves, these are the companies that private equities are getting really heavily interested in.
Got it. And so what does that mean for the industry? Like, where are we at in the industry journey when private equity is really starting to focus a lot on the ancillary businesses?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Right now, what that means is it is definitely a hot industry. We already all knew that. But the fact that now it's starting to pour outside of the DSOs into these just means that there's even more of an appetite that this is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Okay, what I'm interested to see, though, is it's not so much in the private equity world, but in the VC world, they're wanting these mega returns, right? 100 times returns on their investments. And dental just doesn't have the market to support that, right? So if I build an RCM company, I only have a finite amount of dental offices that I can sell my company to in order to grow it big. Right. Whereas with the dental office, I can continue to buy more and more dental offices and continue to expand and consolidate. So what I'm interested to see is, obviously, I think that what this does is it increases demand for these companies, which will then naturally mean there's going to be more competitors coming in because there's an opportunity for a lot of money to be made. But what I'm interested to see is how big or how much of a rush does that happen? In medical, when this happened, these RCMs companies and such started coming up all over the place because there's a lot of opportunity there. But there's also a huge market, right? It's multi-billion dollar market there.
It's much a bigger market.
Whereas it's not that same market in dental. So I'm interested to see where it ends or if it goes very far.
Bigger market, and then also more insurance money too, right?
More insurance money, but it depends on what it is, right? Like an IT company that services hospitals doesn't care about the insurance money.
No. But my point is that anytime there's insurance money in something, then you have a lot more upside from a financial standpoint. So like, just think about like the auto body industry. It's mainly built off of insurance. That's why they're in existence. The insurance are paying for the car to be fixed in whole. In dental, you don't really have that. Dental, you don't have any insurance paying for it. It's all cash, which means it's going to be a smaller market.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, like you look at the total spend of the industry, that's going to be the biggest factor. I mean, you can have rising rising healthcare costs, and that's just going to increase the payouts of insurances. But at the same time, as we've seen in dental, and the same thing is happening in medical, that insurers are pushing back and saying, you know what, we don't want to continue to pay these higher rates. So I don't know if the insurance rates are going to increase and therefore cause an increase of demand for these insurances, or if just because the demand is already there, they're trying to take a portion of it.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited to see what happens there, because this is going to continue to heat up, and it's going to impact not just the DSOs, but single practitioners. It's going to impact all the vendors that they work with. I mean, pretty much everybody is going to be touched by this in the dental industry, regardless of where you're at. So very interested to see what happens there. Are you okay? Are you okay if I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, it's great. Okay. I just wanted to point that out to people, make sure that they're paying attention to that and what it means for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to look at, I want to talk about burnout. So I recently did a podcast with a younger entrepreneur who kind of went through his first round of burnout. And he was just like, man, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. And he's built an agency, a successful agency. And he's in
How long has he been doing it?
A year or two. So still fairly new, but he literally, he works 7 days a week, and just is like all day, every day for 2 years. And he's just like, I've never felt like this before. What does it mean? Am I going to keep feeling like this forever? And I was like, no. This is like normal. We hit walls, we're humans. And we started talking through, how to deal with that. And then also you brought up around in the dental industry, anxiety and stress, which is, I know in the dental industry, starting all the way from the dentist out, it's a stressful industry. It's not a laid back industry. And I know every industry has its level of stress levels that they deal with, and I get that, but it really hits hard in dental. We have very high suicide rates and those kind of things. So I was interested when you brought up anxiety and stress, and I'm looking at burnout over here. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to recognize kind of what that looks like and feels like for them. I think that as a society, we've gotten to the point where we really only acknowledge it when it's kind of taken over ourselves, right? Especially as entrepreneurs, right? Yeah. I don't know about you, but a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've connected with, like including myself, we'll feel these like smaller levels of it. We just kind of push it off and ignore it and just say, hey, it's part of the job, right? And then all of a sudden it builds up, and all of a sudden it explodes, right? And so I think that for me, it's really just like, what does that look like? And can it or should it even be addressed at the smaller levels, or do we need to wait until it gets blown up?
Yeah. No,
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm pro, for me, I'm proactive at it now, because I know what's going to happen if I don't deal with it. And I know what it feels like. I don't want to continue to do the things that I do if I don't take care of myself. So there's things that I do to help me deal with it. but it's proactive. It's not reactive, to your point. Now, there's a difference. I think there's a huge difference between being a startup and being, having an established business. Like there's different levels of grind, and there's times when you have to grind. When you do a startup, you have to grind. You hire people and you're like, hey, we're going to be grinding it out. This is like going to be hard work. We're going to be working a lot, and we're going to do this for the next 2 years or 3 or whatever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, because there's some people that totally say, you shouldn't live like that at all. I think that that's totally normal. It's kind of like when you have a kid, right? You have a baby. When you first have a baby, you don't sleep for a while. And there's a lot of investment to go into it. And then you teach them how to use the restroom, and you teach them how to eat. And there's, several years there where they're just like tearing things up, and they're very cute, thankfully, right? And so but they're just like absolutely wrecking havoc. And then as they get older, they start to contribute, and they really start to, you don't have to be as involved, but there's different levels to raising a kid. I think business is very much the same, that there's levels to it, but I think proactive approach to burnout is 100% necessary if if you want to perform at a high level. I think that's the key, because you can perform at like somebody who's a really good entrepreneur like yourself, Tanner. You could probably perform at 50% and everybody else would be like, oh, he's still killing it, right? So it's like, well, your 50% probably isn't good enough for you. And so I think that proactiveness is really key.
Yeah, as you're sitting there saying that, Gary, one thing that's coming to my mind too is recognizing, which is another one of the topics that we wanted to chat about, is the passion behind it too, right? If I'm sitting there grinding out 7 days a week around something that I love, it doesn't feel like I'm grinding at all. It just feels like I'm doing what I love.
Yep.
Right. And so as an entrepreneur, yes, it could be, hey, I'm doing this. It is a lot of work, but I don't even think about it every single day. Whereas if I'm doing this because of a financial outcome that I'm expecting in the future, yes, every single day to day seems like an eternity, and it is miserable. And yes, my stress and anxiety is going to go out the roof.
Yeah.
Right?
So this
I
actually,
think that really is important.
I think so too. And so this actually came up in the conversation I was having with the entrepreneur, and the young agency owner, and I actually asked him, like, which parts of your job do you love and which parts don't you love? Because I think that can change. So that changed for me a lot. I used to love doing certain things inside the business, and then over time I stopped loving those. And so what I realized, and again, this is just for me, this is because I think there's a couple different kinds of people who work inside of businesses, and I'm a specific one of those kind of people. For me, I have to have light at the end of the tunnel of anything that I start. I have to know that I can either keep growing it or I have an exit out of it. If I have something in my head that I am going to be stuck there forever as a repetitive job, I just can't do it. Like it instantly, it doesn't take very much time. I instantly feel trapped, and I just don't want to be there. Now, there's other people out there that they're not usually entrepreneurs, that don't mind repetitive jobs. Like school teachers are great examples. Like, I could never be a school teacher. Once I figured out, I'm teaching the same curriculum over and over and over again to a different group of kids, like I would feel trapped. And obviously other people don't feel that way. So I think a lot of that has to do with self-awareness. Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that it is understanding and recognizing where you do find energy and passion, where you don't. And I think that, like you said, though, different stages, you have different things that you have to do that you can never really kind of hand off, right? Like, I'm at a small enough stage right now with our company. There are things that I have to do that I hate doing, but I don't have any other option. I have to do them, right? When I first started my DSO, I did it. I think I didn't do it out of passion. I did it because I was young and excited about this future of what I was going to achieve and whatever. And I think that going into it with that, there was all of these things that I had to do that I hated, that I did have some pretty big like stress and anxiety meltdowns, that even though the business model was a lot more predictable building a DSO than it is doing like a tech startup, I think that my tech startup is actually easier because I'm doing it out of drive for something that I love and enjoy. Whereas with my DSO, it wasn't that.
Let me ask you a question. I totally agree with that. So inside of my business, I've done tons of things that I hate doing. But let's pretend that you never learned those things. Let's just say that you got a leadership role at a DSO and you worked there for a couple of years, like out of the box. You never went through that grind. You never did those things that you hate doing. Would you be able to start the tech company that you have today?
I think that you can always start it no matter your experience and background, but the way that you start it will always be different. Will I have started it and have been as effective as I am now? No way.
Yeah.
Right. But if I went and did something else, and where I went and worked at a different company, I could have started this tech company better than what I'm doing right now. There's been such a learning curve that I've had to fail and learn and et cetera. And I'm not done yet, I'm sure. So I think that, yes, depending on your background, you'll always bring strengths and weaknesses into it based off of that. If I went and built a DSO, or if I got a job at a DSO where I was a leader, et cetera, sometimes my experience is I've always been in a company that I've owned. I've never worked in another company. And sometimes I regret that because I don't know what good looks like. Like, I have to make it up. I have no idea because I've never had any experience.
Yeah. The way I look at it, at being an entrepreneur and building your own business, is that you have to get reps in on things that you don't like, so you understand them, so you can find the people to help you in the areas that you need the help. Without those reps, it's difficult to even navigate that. I kind of liken it to going to the gym. Like guys really like going to the gym and hitting arms and chest, but they don't want to do calves or they don't want to do, core or whatever. Right. And it's like, no, you need to do that. If you want to be healthy overall, you need to do the parts that you like and you don't like. However, with the entrepreneurship, as you grow, you can you can learn. For me, what I've done, I literally take a piece of paper, cut it in half. And every once in a while, I just write down what are the things that I did today that I hated, and what are the things that I did that brought me momentum and that I'm excited about. And then I try to make my schedule revolve around the things that I love, and try to find support around the things that I don't love. And I've done that multiple times, and it changes too. Sometimes there's things that I'm sure I put a long time ago on that list that I love that I don't love now. And so I think of it more of like a journey. But for me, I know the one thing is like, I can't be trapped in something long-term. So even like what you're saying, right. You're spending your time in these things that you're doing that you may not like right now, and you can't let go of them. As long as I have like a roadmap of like, okay, I'm going to build this, I'm going to produce this revenue, and then I'm going to hire somebody for this position, I'm totally good with that. I can make that happen.
And I want to shout out to anybody else that is kind of in an early stage of entrepreneurship where you are struggling doing things that you don't want to do. I kind of want to provide a alternative one. When I was at a DSO, that's what I did. I had to do everything that I didn't want to do, and it sucked, and I just did it. But now as I'm starting this new company, I recognize, you know what? I have a lot of flexibility in what I can do, right? So for example, sales, I didn't have to do sales as a DSO. And now that I have to do sales as like a tech company, I absolutely hate it. Like it drains me more than anything. And I naturally don't think that I'm very gifted in it. And so, and everyone around me is like, oh, you just got to figure it out. You got to get the messaging and you have to do it and blah, blah, blah. And my rebuttal with that was, yeah, I had to do all those things in other companies too, but I was able to hire out a lot of that stuff that I didn't want to do. So with my DSO, and we're in early, I mean, not my DSO, my current tech company with Unify, we're in early stages of this, so we can check in over the next few weeks to see how it goes. But I went out and said, hey, I'm going to find a sales leader who is ambitious and excited about the startup world that is willing to come in and take a little bit of equity and grind it out with me because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm using my collateral of equity to bring in somebody else. And that's always an option when you're doing a startup.
It is.
So we'll see how it goes. I mean, everyone's like, I've had some responses that it'll never work, but we'll see. I mean, this guy that we're bringing on seems incredible. So.
Yep, you can make it work. 100% you can make it work. It's just picking the right person. And that's the risky part, right? With those partnerships is like, and I know the DSO world deals with this as well, is that it's kind of like drafting in the NBA. You know, you're drafting on talent and you're drafting on okay, this kid's good. Like he can play basketball. But is he going to be driven for the next 10 years? Is he going to work out harder than everybody else for the next 10 years? Or is he going to be more dedicated to partying and living up and, just kind of living the celebrity life? And you really don't know. Like you don't know. There's no way to really measure that. And they could go left or right. I mean, there's plenty of people. I think of Anthony Bennett, who came in the NBA. He was built just like LeBron. Amazing body, amazing skill set. But the guy didn't work. Like he didn't actually work on his craft versus LeBron has like the perfect basketball body and he outworked everybody else. So it's kind of crazy when you partner with people you don't know, you hope, and you're basing it off of history, but you never know how it's going to pan out in the future.
Yeah. The funny thing though is that, and this is actually something that I've learned in the tech startup world, is that a lot of people think you give away equity, you're giving up a partnership forever. And I don't think that that's true. What I've learned in the tech startup world that it was so fascinating to me is that there's literally this economy of startup developers. They'll come in, they'll build your MVP, yep. They'll get it to a point where it is viable that you can sell it, and they take 5% and they stay on for maybe like a year or two, and then they leave. They purposely leave to go do another product, and that's kind of all explained up front, right? So I think that can be an option, which is, hey, recognize, hey, this is my life cycle of where I want to be involved in this company, and it has an end, and it doesn't need to be that you're a partner forever going
developers
forward.
Do that because they're putting it's a little bit different in the tech world, because if you basically how the private equities work in the tech world is, I'm going to invest a ton of money into 10 companies, and 2 of them, if we're lucky, are going to absolutely be unicorns. They're going to be huge companies, right? and in one or two. And that's all you need. If you put 10 million into 10 companies and one of them hits, you end up ahead. And they know the vast majority of them are going to fail. And these programmers do the same thing. They're like, okay, cool. I'm just going to get 5% as many companies as I can over the next several years. And then one of them might hit. And if they do, 5% of $100 million companies, humongous. And you pick correctly. But in the dental, you don't really see that, right? Like that doesn't really exist in the dental world, does it? Or does it kind of happen in a different way?
I don't know if you're right. I don't think it does exist, but I think that it should. And I think it goes around of that self-awareness of you as a leader, what you should be doing. And I think back to, there's a guy named Cameron Harold who he was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He was the one that built it up and got it really big. Yep. And he was early days of the DEO. He came in and spoke to us and he said, I am a C-level person for a company between 20 million to 100 million. He says, below 20 million, I don't have the grind. I don't, that is not me. I don't love it. Above 100 million, that company gets too corporate and it's not my skill set. So he said, I will take any company all day long from 20 million to 100 million, but once they hit 100 million, I'm out. Right. And so I sit there and think about that from the dental space. And there's these entrepreneurs that are like, oh, I'm at 1 million now and I'm going to go to 100 million plus, and not realizing that those are different skill sets that you need along the way, that maybe we should sit there and say, hey, I have the skill set of building a department from nothing and I'll take it and move it to a certain degree. And then
not only different skill sets, but the environment, right? So I remember when we went from a $3 million company to a like $10-15 million company, we had to change. Like we changed everything and we did it really fast. So normally I think it happens slowly, but it was a lot more structure, a lot more, we had to add layers of leadership. Like there was a lot of things that we had to add that weren't there before. And what that taught me was that a lot of people that worked with us didn't like that structure. So we had people who said, hey, I'm out of here. I didn't sign up for this. It was more wild, wild west before. Now you have all this structure and accountability. And I actually had to learn to understand that. I didn't understand that before. And I was like, you know what? It makes sense. This isn't the right place for you. And kind of how I would liken that is, I don't think I would like it if we went, corporate, like we use that term corporate so lightly. But if we went to private equity and we, went to the stock exchange and we had all these private equity meetings that I had to be accountable for and blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I'd like that structure. Like I maybe I would, but I don't think I would. And so I can understand why people like different parts of the journey. So do you think in the dental industry that people, because this scaling dental offices and scaling dental groups more specifically is so new, that there's just people haven't identified like, hey, here's my niche. I help people go from one office to 5 offices or from 10 offices to 50 offices? I
think that's exactly right. I think that it is people, there's not enough experience in the space to be able to identify that, hey, these are the different phases and here I fit in within these phases. Like I think
so
back,
interesting.
And there's a lot of like entrepreneurs that I know that got to a great sized company, right? $20-30 million DSO, but they couldn't themselves as a leader get past this fact that like, hey, the next levels are going to require that I hire people above and beyond the homegrown skills that we have right now.
Yep.
Right. And so the fact that they weren't able to get above that means that they're going to be kind of stuck in this void forever. Right. And I think that's exactly right, is that their skill set was from 5 million to 20 million or whatever. Right. Like that's where they feel as an entrepreneur.
This actually goes right into our next topic perfectly around the C players in dental, because so here's what I've noticed. This is feedback I've gotten from other people. So specifically in the tech space. So you can tell me if I'm wrong or if the stuff I'm hearing is totally wrong. So we go out and we're building the SaaS product, right, that we're using for SMC, and it helps us track marketing and all that kind of stuff. But then we have to integrate with a lot of these PMSs, and then we also have to work with these groups. We have to work with their IT people. So we come in and we start working with them, and over and over and over again, I've heard, is this seriously like what we're working with here, right? Like these people that we're working with, is this seriously, this is their IT person? This is a full-time IT person that's working for this DSO, or this is the software that they're using. This is seriously how they built it and what you expect me to do with it. Not just once, but over and over and over and over again. And I've also noticed it. I can speak more to this one personally. I've also noticed this in the marketing space as well. I've noticed when when I'm like, man, I need to pick someone's brain around marketing and how to build things out in a different way or think about things in a different way. I almost always, 100% of the time, have to go outside of dental and have to look at these other industries, because I just don't think that people who are amazing at marketing are like, I should get into the dental industry. There's bigger opportunities or more exciting opportunities. So what ends up happening, and again, this is the theory, is that you end up getting more of the C players. You're not getting the A and the B players. And this is probably, if this is true, probably seeing it in leadership and those other things as well. You're not getting the CEO that knows how to take a company from $20 to $100 million, because they have a better opportunity in other places that they can go faster and more flexibility and blah, 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 blah. So what do you think on that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's absolutely right. I think it's completely true. People don't sit there and think of oral health as like this huge, exciting thing that I would want to be involved in from a marketing perspective, right? Like you get that with things that are front of center, right? AI right now is having a huge push. So you're getting marketers that want to be involved in AI, right? Or they're crypto or whatever it is, but you don't hear that in dental. And so, yes, I think that what ends up happening is that you get the less passion, you get people that come in that are less passionate about the spin and more passionate about their craft. And that ends up being a range between A to C. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are, I think what we also see a lot in dental is homegrown skill sets. Hey, you used to be really good and you really like this. Let's move you into here. And then they kind of self-teach and self-learn, but they're not going out into the industry to actually get what is an industry, like a marketing level qualification, right?
Yeah.
And so especially with IT, like if I were to answer the IT one specifically, the problem with IT is, and this is a problem that I think exists in our industry, is that we view it as a cost center and not a revenue producer. And so because of that, we're going to skimp on it any way that we can to get by. Right. And that includes hiring good talent. Like we're not going to hire good talent. I know a few DSOs that from the very beginning, they went out and recruited top level talent from other medical or top level groups where they put them in, and it completely changes their organization from day one in efficiencies. Yeah. But nobody really can see that and understand that until you've done it. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that in general, and unfortunately, IT gets
the cost difference is huge there. It's not it's not a small cost difference to go to skimp on it versus investing. I don't know what the numbers are. I just know that it has to be massive.
Well, I mean, the biggest one right now is cybersecurity. Like cybersecurity jobs are huge. And so the fact that you're a dental company that has to deal with HIPAA and all these other things, your earning potential is huge outside of dental, that dental groups aren't willing to pay that earning potential. That's why you have to get brought in early on and get equity. And that's exactly how they retrain these A-level players, is that they're getting equity of this group, even though they're just IT.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good opportunities. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, this has been a really good episode. Thanks so much.
Yeah, talk to you soon.